Welcome to session 6 of day 4 of Streaming Media East Connect, our biggest Streaming Media Connect event yet. And it's our 4th one. It won't be our last. We have another Streaming Media Connect on tap for August, and more information will be coming out soon about that. But we are also looking forward to seeing everyone in person again as we plan Streaming Media West for Huntington Beach the first week of November. If you're interested in speaking, the call for speakers is open. If you're interested in sponsoring, the information for that is also available on our streamingmedia.com West website, and Steve Nathans Kelly will pop the link to that website in the chat in just a moment. And as always, all of these sessions will be available in the archives on Streaming Media's YouTube channel within a day or so of them going live on Zoom. And Steve will also pop that link in the chat. Also, if you just want to click on the same Zoom link that you used to attend this session, you can watch the on-demand version in Zoom with the chat information intact. That should be ready half hour, 45 minutes after each session ends. A couple of housekeeping notes. The chat will be open, but we ask that you put any questions you have in the Q&A tab. That just makes it easier for Ben and I to keep track of them and make sure we get to everyone's questions over the course of the next hour or so. So before we jump into our session, how to podcast like a pro, I'd like to thank our diamond sponsor, Signiant, and we have a short video message from them.
When the director calls action.
And action.
When the game is on.
Pick it up, it's good.
Or it's time to save the universe again. Media Shuttle is there. Trusted by more than 25,000 media companies, Media Shuttle delivers, making it easy and secure to send any size file anywhere fast. The journey begins with Media Shuttle portals, customized and branded for any project and designed to be so easy, your end users will love it. All while giving operations teams complete control through a simple yet powerful admin interface. Add users, set permissions, customize file delivery specs, and report on all activity. Blast off with proprietary acceleration technology. Media Shuttle moves your content anywhere in the internet-connected world at hyper speeds. Along the way, your files are protected. Our commitment to enterprise-grade security has made Media Shuttle a preferred tool with Hollywood studios, major sports leagues, broadcasters, and more. With Media Shuttle, your files are never handed over to Signiant. File movement is orchestrated between the end user's workstation and your storage, whether on-prem or in the cloud. Your IT team simply provisions your storage, connecting it to the Media Shuttle cloud service, and Signiant handles the rest. Get started on your Media Shuttle journey today, a journey without limits.
All right, as everybody knows, podcasting has exploded in the last 5 years, and it's not just audio anymore. Hasn't been for a long time. Our presenter is Ben Ratner. He is a podcast and video producer and a video podcast producer, as well as an Emmy Award winner. What'd you win the Emmy for, Ben?
I won it for this live streamed show. Technically, it was the New York Emmy for Interactivity. I'm required to say exactly those words. Also, that I won it in 2018, because if I don't say exactly that, I'm breaking the Academy's rules for how I say what I get.
All right. Well, I'm glad you've got that memorized. And there's no one better to walk you through how to podcast like a pro. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Ben.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Thanks, Steve. And yeah, let's get this thing going. I'm gonna share my screen. Desktop 2 over there. Cool. So I am Ben Ratner. I have done podcasting stuff for quite a while now. I used to do podcasting for Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson for about 5 years. I did everything there from random videos to literally doing all of the tech on the podcast besides actually knowing science, because I do not know science. Well, I know what I know from him. Also spent some time working at Al Roker Entertainment, where I ran all the tech for their live streaming, which was essentially a bunch of live podcasts. Also worked at Compound Media, which, if you know Opie and Anthony, it's Anthony Cumia's network from that, which is basically a bunch more live podcasts. And currently, I am a senior director at Maven, which is a company that does content for The Street with Jim Cramer and Sports Illustrated. So without further ado, let's get to this. We're going to spend about half the time where I'm just blabbing at you. And then the second half of the time will be wide open for questions. So please ask as many questions as you can and do them in the Q&A and not the chat, unless you want to annoy me, in which case go ahead and put them into the chat. And it will be awkward if you don't have questions. So let's get this thing going. So I'm going to take you through basically every part of podcasting that I found important. Everything from where to record, how to record, what to record with, how to bring it into video. So let's start with where to record. Let's say you have the greatest budget on earth. The best case scenario is that you get to build yourself a podcast studio. What does that look like? You got soundproof walls, a relatively small enclosed space, so there's not a lot of room for audio to echo. You'll have microphones on arms for everyone so they can move around to get it into the optimal position. Headphones for everyone. Even if they're just talking to each other, you want them to be able to hear their voice, everyone else's voice. If you're playing back audio, phone calls, sound effects, anything like that, you definitely want them to be able to hear. Ideally, each of them would have their own, excuse me, their own audio level for each headphone, because some people like to hear themselves and other people at different volumes. Only have a bottle of water in that podcasting studio. Potentially one that's not going to make a lot of noise or crinkle. Nothing drives me more nuts than when I hear someone sipping and hydrating. If you hear, I'm going to do a horrible sound for you right now. That's an unpleasant thing to hear during a podcast. So make sure for that. From a tech perspective, a lot of times you don't need much more than a computer and an interface. I will give you information on all of that later. So this is kind of what a great podcasting studio looks like. Let's take it a step down from there, because not everyone has budget for a dedicated space like this. You also see they have a great carpet in there. Basically, there is no hard surfaces for that sound to bounce off of. Here's a different kind of one. They had a little bit of money for the soundproofing, which you can literally just buy on Amazon. You could buy it at some hardware stores. These mic arms, kind of mid-level microphones. This is just a room they had available. This is just as good of a podcast studio in many scenarios. You don't need anything super duper fancy. This will get the job done. Or my favorite version of a podcasting studio. I promise you that is just a person under a blanket and not anything that is not just a person under a blanket. And I promise you that they are podcasting. Normally I do these things with people responding to these. So either you're all really creeped out and weirded out that I'm making weird jokes, or I'm just going to assume you're laughing at everything. The deadest place you can record is literally under a blanket. If you're not doing video, that is. If you are adding video to your podcasts, do not record under a blanket. There might be laws against that. But it really does give you really good dead sound. Another really good place to record, especially if you're on your own, is in a closet, a clothing closet. All of your clothing, you know, your walls covered in other stuff. That's a great place to record. So yeah, record wherever you want. Next, let's talk about microphone pickup patterns. We're going to talk about specific microphones in a little bit, but what's important is that you know how to talk into a microphone, or more importantly, if you're telling someone else how to talk into a microphone, how to do that. All right, Michael, we'll get to your question in a little bit for headset versus separate. So with microphone, you have a couple different pickup patterns. You have an omnidirectional pickup pattern, which means that sound is coming from all over the microphone, literally behind, in front, left, right. The more popular kind of microphone, particularly for podcasting, is a unidirectional microphone where the sound is being picked up from just one direction. A cardioid is a popular pickup pattern. So basically, if you look at my microphone here, it's picking up the most sound from me in the front, and then it's basically not taking any sound from the back, or it's taking a lot less sound from the back. So think about it. You don't want to hear like me randomly snapping over here, or if you're, two people talking across from each other at a table, you want to make sure that only you are coming in your mic. If you have isolated audio between the two mics, it means you can edit it. You can cut out people's coughs and stuff. And you could also run into some audio phasing issues. So most microphones are unidirectional. The other option is a bidirectional microphone. You don't see these all too much nowadays, but if you go back to like Tonight Show, Johnny Carson, when they have a microphone on the desk, it's literally a mic that picks up from two different sides. So you can have your host talking and your guest talking and hear them just about equally. But in general, we're going to be going for unidirectional microphones. Let me show you what happens if you don't talk right into a unidirectional microphone. Right now, I bet you're having a very hard time hearing me. But as I get closer to the microphone, it's going to be a lot easier to hear me until I'm right here in that sweet spot. So this is really where you want to be talking really directly into that microphone. We'll talk about some issues with talking too directly into a microphone in a little bit. But bottom line is you want to be talking as close to that microphone as possible. The closer you talk to a microphone, the deeper and kind of that radio voice you'll get. The further away you get, you'll get my weird nasally northeastern voice. So you want to really be pretty close to the microphone. We'll talk about things that might get in the way of that, though. There's two main categories of microphones. You have dynamic mics and condenser mics. In the podcasting world, for the vast majority of most people, you want to be using a dynamic mic. They're generally more physically robust. This is a SM58. You can literally use these things as a hammer, although don't, because then you might have some scruff marks, but they'll work after you hit them. They also generally don't need phantom power. That's the extra electricity that you might need to add, usually 20 decibels to a microphone to make it work. Most dynamic mics, and therefore most podcast mics, don't need that. The other kind of mic is a condenser mic. They're very sensitive. They're actually higher quality audio pickup. They're only really functional in really good studio environments. They're very expensive. They really pick up a lot of kind of little things. So you need to have a really good controlled environment. Also, they're very expensive. So the vast majority of podcasters are using dynamic microphones. So let's talk about some specific mics. All right, so these are kind of traditional radio-esque mics. As I mentioned, I'm using a Shure SM58. This is $100. One of the most versatile microphones you can get. Excuse me. This is an analog microphone, which means that it uses an XLR cable. So if you look here, it's literally a cable going into the back there. I think you're able to see my mouse, right? Eric, just give me a thumbs up.
I think we just lost, yeah, you may have just lost the connection or lost sound. I popped on screen because we do have a relevant question from the audience.
All right.
Perhaps you're going to get to it, but how about the question, a headset versus a separate mic and headphones? What about headset mics? You're going to get to those, or?
Sure, yeah. Headset mics, you don't see a whole lot outside of Howard Stern, who decided to popularize them. They're convenient for a lot of reasons because it's one thing. It keeps the microphone in the right spot. Those tend to cost a little bit more money, and people don't tend to like the look of them, particularly in the video world. With video, you could kind of keep your head away from the mic a little bit. If you now have giant headphones and a giant thing up literally directly in front of your mouth, you don't really get to see as much of the face. And when you're talking on video, you want to see people's facial emotions and what their mouth is doing. So that would be my answer. You can absolutely use them. I prefer ones that actually have a separate, basically a separate output and input. You want an XLR for your microphone. You want an XLR for your or a 1/4 inch back into the actual headset. USB microphones are a little different. You can do it with both. You just tend not to see those a whole lot unless you're a Howard Stern fan. Hope I answered that question.
Ben, your audio is going kind of in and out.
All right, let me switch. Isn't that embarrassing on a podcasting thing that the mic's going out? Let me switch. All right, I switched over to the one on my webcam. Is that sounding better?
It's a little hot.
A little hot. Oh my God, that's embarrassing. Let me just press a couple more buttons here. This is going awesome, isn't it? Let's try. The built-in microphone. All right, how do I sound now?
That's good.
That's good. All right, we're going to go with it. My headphones aren't going to do anything. This microphone isn't going to do anything, but I'm going to keep talking into it as if it's doing something because it makes me look, I don't know, professional, not professional. Certainly don't sound professional. All right. Yeah, so that's that with, yes, thank you to the anonymous attendee who says, this has been Murphy's Law presentation on audio with wonky audio. Couldn't happen any other way, really. Another microphone in addition to the SM58 that I really like is the Audio-Technica 2005. It's about $80. It does two things that I love. Yeah, first of all, it's a good price and a relatively good sounding microphone, but it has both
analog and digital connections. That means that you can plug a USB cable into it and use it directly into a computer, and you can use it analog. So, maybe you're going to your home studio has good analog connections, great. Or if you want to just take this thing, you need to use it on a laptop wherever you go. You can just use the USB portion of it. These are all unidirectional cardioid microphones, so they pick up audio in the right direction. And again, this is dynamic. Oh, thanks. Steve's putting things in there. Follow-up comment from Michael Graves. I'm going to answer this now. Hiding behind a stand-mounted mic and pop filters similarly hides the presenter. Yep, that is a problem. So basically, one of the realities with video and podcasts is that you need to make some sacrifices. Typically, you could put your mic a little bit further away and still see well. You might need to just use a little bit more gain in your microphone. It's just one of those realities of podcasts. You never see podcasts recorded with lavalier mics. Those just don't sound good in people's ears. You see them on TV because TV has to look good. You just don't see those in the podcasting world. Thank you for that questions. And another person asked, just because we're talking about this, are the audio problems due to being on Wi-Fi, a bad cable, bad mixer, bad USB interface, or a software issue? I have no idea. I'm on Ethernet here, but thanks for your question where I screwed up. All right, let's move on to a couple more microphones. Here's another traditional radio mic. This is the Shure SM7B. This actually has a trace of being unidirectional and omnidirectional. The one time omnidirectional mics are actually good in podcasting is with people who are not good at podcasting and talking into a microphone. It means you're going to pick up a lot more sound, so you might get some detrimental issues, but it means you're always going to have their sound. So with certain kinds of talent, that's actually a really useful kind of microphone to use. This microphone in general, it's got deeper sound. These tend to need a fair bit of gain, so you just need to have a good mixer with those. Let's move on to my personal favorite radio microphone, the EV RE20. These cost about $450. These happen to work pretty well at a distance, so I will have a speaker 6 to 8 inches from this and still get pretty good sound from them. They're unidirectional. They're a little bit less bassy than the SM7B that I showed you earlier. But if you look at the stuff I've done with like the Anthony Cumia show on Compound Media, then this is kind of mic I like to use for that. These also work pretty nicely on arms. We got a question from an anonymous attendee here. How do you feel? I wish in Zoom, if you ever use Google Docs and you have anonymous people in there, it'll have like an anonymous random animal, like an anonymous manatee or something. But we'll just go with anonymous attendee for now. How do you feel about the battle between the SM58, the SM57, the Shure SM7B, and the MV7? They're all just the same mic in a different case. That's basically the same. They have slightly different frequency pickups, slightly different, but mostly it's the same mic in a different form factor. But different form factors have different needs. Thank you. And Wanda asks, what about wireless microphones? Never, ever, 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 ever use a wireless microphone unless it's required for your situation. I just had a problem with a wired microphone here. You run into frequency issues. People have cell phones that interfere with things. I live in New York City, and you literally need to do like frequency checks if you open a new studio to make sure there's not interference. It's just another kink in the chain that can cause a problem. There is almost never a reason to use a wireless microphone. It's good to have good, wired setups though, where it can almost seem wireless, where you have, they make mic stands that have the XLR cables that go through them. So, you could really clean it up that way, make it look nice, but do not use a wireless microphone. I will come and find you. Wanda, not you personally, someone else. And anonymous attendee, I promise you we'll get back to real audio stuff in a second. Seal question asked why the manatees getting the love with a shout out today. It's because everyone knows that manatees are better than seals. All right. So we've spoken about traditional radio microphones. Let's move on to some more modern digital ones. This is your classic entry-level USB microphone, the blue Snowball. It's about $50. It's a cardioid mic. It's a condenser mic. It just sounds good. Does it sound great? No. Does it sound good in many situations? Yes. Yeah, a lot of people were using these over the last year or so, even on TV for broadcast for like voiceover work. And it's just a good, solid, relatively cheap microphone. The step up from this would be the AT2020. This looks a lot more like some of the other radio mics that we were talking about before. It's a cardioid condenser, solid mic for $100. And if you want kind of the top line of the Blue, which is kind of they're one of the main digital microphone brands. They took over the space a while back and they kind of just ran with it. This is just got everything in it. It's cardioid, it's got stereo, omni, or bidirectional. So you can really set it to be used for anything. It's got a headphone jack right on it. It's got gain control. The one thing to note with this is you want to address it from the front, not the top. So you basically want to look right into that logo when you're talking. A lot of people try to talk into the top of it and then they'll sound a little bit distant. And it is a condenser microphone. All right. Just one more thing on microphones. There are a million microphones out there. I could get into a million of them. I'm not gonna. If you have specific questions later on, maybe we can get to some of them. Most microphones, if you spend more than 100 or so bucks, are pretty much going to do the job every time. It's just the difference of the little intricacies that you might need within them. Other thing is, cell phones are pretty damn good nowadays. If you have to, wired headphones sound pretty good, especially in a sound dampened environment. It's not going to be as good, but you can do pretty good with cell phones nowadays. How do you make your microphone sound better? Two big things would be a pop filter and a windscreen. A windscreen and pop filter, basically, they're things you put in front of the microphone that do a couple things. One, they get your mouth a little bit further away from the microphone. Otherwise, you might hear like lip smacking, just breathing a little more. So this kind of helps with just the extra wind that you create. Mouth wind. There's multiple kinds of winds a human can create. The only one we're talking about here would be mouth wind. And these are cheap. You can get these for like $10. Or you can just get a pop filter to go over a microphone. People have used literally socks. You just need something over the mic to stop extra wind from coming through. These are cheap. Get them. You won't regret it. Let's talk about interfaces. How do you get your sound into a computer? We'll talk about recorders in a little bit. Normally, I would say go for an iRig right away. This is one of my favorite things. It's $30. It works for everything. You'll note that this is what I was using right now to make my microphone work, and it was not working for some reason. So I've got to troubleshoot. I don't know if it was the iRig, but generally these are really versatile because they've got an XLR. They have a XLR on them, and you could use them with either 3.5 millimeter into almost any cell phone or laptop, besides Apple, which you have to use the stupid dongle for. Damn you, Apple. But it means that you can really get full audio fidelity into even just a cell phone. Anonymous attendee is asking if I've tried a Neat microphone yet. I haven't. That's the end of my answer to that. Another interface I like for just $100 is the Shure X2U. It's a little bit higher quality. It's got USB in the back. It's got mic gain. It's got a monitor on it. You can add phantom power with it, which you can also do with the $30 iRig. It's a step up. It's a nice portable thing for an XLR solution. A step up from these kind of portable ones are more kind of desktop ones. I see a lot of people using the Focusrite Scarlett Solo. It's a little over $100. It has one XLR input. You could even use this for instruments and stuff. This is basically just a solid way to get your microphone into a computer. You could upgrade from that to something like the Tascam 4x4, which has four inputs, about $200. And it also has a, actually this one I don't think has a headphone jack for each of them. It just has one main headphone jack. Step up from that, this is a relatively new unit, is the Zoom PodTrack P4. It's about $200. What's great about this is, first of all, it is both a recorder and a interface, so you can use it either with computer software or just right onto a onto an SD card. You could individually mute channels. You could add phantom to everything. It's got both level control for the microphones and for the headsets, which is really important. It also has a mix minus feature for calls. So if you're Skyping people in, which is popular nowadays, or using any sort of video call or audio call, it'll actually send them a separate mix back. So they aren't in their own mix. Otherwise you get feedback. Wanda Trotter says, I'm confused. Can't you just plug the microphone in with a USB port? Not all microphones have USB ports. Not all people have microphones with USB ports. So yes, if you're in a situation where you're using computer, great. But you know, I like to have analog microphones available because if I'm just doing a remote shoot, which is how I do a lot of my personal podcasting, you literally grab a Zoom, couple microphones, you could literally throw it all in a bag and be recording. And USB doesn't quite work in that scenario, unless you have a laptop, yada yada. Let's see, let me just do that. EV Trainer asks, how are you cleaning microphones and other equipment between guests? Do you have an established procedure? Are you going with the contract recommendations of SAG? All these people have come up for something myself. Podcasts tend to be a more intimate thing. You know, I'll clean the surface of them with like a wipe. They make like special things that you can use to clean a microphone that won't get too much crap in them. The reality is CDC has basically said that things that you touch, that's not really how it spreads, and you would really need to blow hard into a microphone for it to create aerosols. So it's not that big of a deal nowadays, but you know, use whatever guidelines you feel safe with. In general, I just keep people at distance. Use something like a windscreen. That'll help even more with getting people's aerosols from talking out of the way. Mixers. If you're using more than one person, you may need to use a mixer. One of the cheapest ones that I see people using, this is a small USB mixer, 90 bucks. It's got 2 XLR inputs. It works as a USB interface. So you can use this to mix your sound. It's got a little bit of EQ there. EQ, which means that, you know, you can change some of the audio quality. If the person like me has this annoying high tones in my voice, you can bring those down a little. If you hear rumbling outside from construction or whatever, sometimes you could lower those lows. So solid entry-level mixer. The most popular thing in kind of mid-level podcasting now is the Rodecaster Pro. 600 bucks. Super easy to do remote calls with it. It literally has Mix Minus built into it. It records multi-track. You can use it with or without a computer. Super easy to use. This is kind of the all-in-one option that just everyone is using nowadays. Came out about 2 years ago, and everyone I know that started a podcast that isn't doing anything super complicated just loves this thing. If you want to step up from that, I personally like the Allen Heath QU16. By the way, all of these mixers are good for TV and other kinds of broadcast also. I personally like the QU16. It's got 16 inputs. You could run it on an iPad. It's got pretty good internal processing. It works as an audio interface. So the way I most frequently use this is that I'll plug this just over a simple USB into Adobe Audition, which I personally use, just get all my audio tracks that way. It also on its own has USB multi-track record. So you can record all 16 inputs of this and just walk off with a flash drive. And last, it's got so many outputs. It has, I think, 16 individual outputs. So if you need to do individual mix minuses to each individual person, if you need to send a mix to Zoom, to speakers, to people in the lobby, it's a good tool for that. Okay, so do you want to do your production live? And live is in quotes because when I say live, I also mean live to tape. Or do you want to do your production with post-production? This depends on the kind of podcast that you're doing. There's kind of two major qualities. There's scripted podcasts, and then there's conversational, non-scripted podcasts. I'm guessing more of the people here are interested, more of the people here are interested in conversational podcasts, mostly because they're the easiest. Yeah, you got to produce them, plan what you're talking about, but you can just get out there, maybe have a little intro music, a little outro music, and just talk the entire time. The step up from that is adding sound effects, adding bump music underneath, changing the mood with that. But I'm mostly going to be talking about kind of live to tape podcasts here. One of the benefits of doing a podcast live or live to tape is that you can have something that most podcasts don't get the luxury of, and that's a live audience. Live audiences are good for a few things. Instant feedback, which you don't normally get on a regular if you're just talking into a screen. You can see if people are engaged and interested in what you're talking about, see what they're commenting about, see, hey, maybe they have something in the comment section that would be an additional, thing in the conversation. So it kind of also brings timeliness that podcasts don't always have. Excuse me, talking a lot. Water is good. I'm using it. This is a Yeti, which with Blue Yeti, completely unrelated. It's a audio and mug joke for those of you. Thank you, AV Trainer. Put some good AV sanitation guidelines. I'm a dirty person. Don't mind me. All right, so live versus post. Let's talk a little bit about remote recording. This is obviously, I don't know if any of you heard, we've been going through a global pandemic, which has required people to be at distances from people. Oops, is this the right slide? Okay, this is the right slide. I thought it was upgraded. So some of these are options that work with both audio and video. Skype, it's free and easy. You can upgrade using software called Ecamm. That'll help you get your individual audio recorded channels. Don't love Skype. It does a little bit too much audio compression for me. And to record the video with Ecamm, it's only like 15 frames a second. It's not great. You don't have all too much control. Zencastr, let's actually talk about Zoom next. Zoom, you're going to want to do a paid Zoom plan. Those cost about $15 a month for the simple ones. It's nice because they will give you isolated audio tracks after the recording. They won't let you do that live yet. That's just not a feature, so I don't love it for that. And they don't give you isolated video tracks. So if you're trying to make that, a video podcast on YouTube or whatever later, not great for that unless you just have everyone on like the 6th screen or whatever. Zencastr has shown up in the last couple of years, and it is great. It's free right now. Otherwise, it starts at $20 a month. It does high quality recordings through basically 2 methods. One, it's just pretty good quality over the actual stream itself, but it also records a local version of that person's of your guest's recording and your recording. What that means is, sure, you're listening back and forth on the stream, but it immediately uploads a uncompressed, non-internet ruined version of that podcast. So it'll be synced up and perfect, and you'll have good quality even if their internet dies. So Zencastr is great, and they do video now too, I think in beta. They have a competitor called, what's it called? Something. Oh, someone's saying Zoom ISO by the makers of Zoom OSC will produce isolated from Zoom. I did not know that. Squadcast is one of them. Yeah, okay. I learned things too. This field is expanding so quickly that I can't even keep track. StreamYard and Restream. StreamYard has basically been the thing that has powered live streaming video for people who don't have infrastructure over the last year or so. If you've seen a bunch of people on a screen with their name in the corner and their video able to zoom in and out, you've probably seen something from StreamYard. Both StreamYard and Restream, which has a similar studio service, they let you get those isolated audio tracks afterwards. If I haven't said it explicitly, the isolated audio tracks are important because that's what gives you the ability to edit those things in post. If someone coughs, if someone, you need to isolate individual things, it's important for that. Yes, Riverside.fm is another one. Last thing, most people are in this world are using Macs. So you can have them just record right into QuickTime. Just make sure you set that QuickTime to higher quality. They will need to email you that file afterwards, but that is a free, good recording quality thing. You just can't explicitly monitor it, so it's not the best. Let's talk a little more about video. The most important thing about video and podcasting, other than the fact that you can do things live, is it opens up an audience that is not podcast listeners. Podcast is going to become, a $1 trillion industry or some high number that I don't know. Whatever it is, just pretend that I said that and that'll be accurate in the future. YouTube has great discovery. Podcasting does not yet have great discovery. It's getting better with Spotify. It's getting better with Apple and Google, but it's still not, it's not nearly as robust as YouTube is, and things like Twitch. And also, people want to watch. They want to see you. So it's a real shame to just not do video. You could also make more money on it. You could make it a premium service. We'll talk about where you can distribute things like Patreon, things like Discord. People pay more to be in those tiers that have video. So do video. And even if you're going to not use it immediately, you want to record it even just for archive. I mean, there's a big value in back catalogs of things. We want to see that thing you did a year ago, whatever, and you just weren't ready to post it as video yet. Also, for social media sharing, waveforms are really ugly and boring. Videos are dynamic and people stop to watch them. So it's helpful to have just video for those social shares. Now let's talk post-production. A lot of you have oh, that is a low resolution photo. Awkward. All right. Well, point here is GarageBand. GarageBand comes with all Macs. It's free. You can use it on an iPad. It has everything and then some that you need to do a podcast. A lot of kids like to use this that haven't used any of the fancier software. It's a little bit more than basic, so it does the job. Audacity. Audacity is free. It is cross-platform. It does multi-track editing. Be careful though, because some of the ways that they edit could be a little bit destructive, which means you can't just undo to go back. So you just need to be careful with that. But it's free. It's very powerful. It's open source. So people have a lot of plugins that could go on top of that. My personal tool of choice is Adobe Audition. If you have Creative Suite, it comes with it. If you have the plan that comes with it. Oops, sorry, I just see a question here. It's just my favorite multi-track tool. I find it a little bit simpler than Avid, which is here. This is Avid. And as a video person, particularly, it has a lot in common with Premiere as far as shortcuts and filters and all that stuff. And you can use Adobe Dynamic Link to connect your audio to your video. So I'll actually sync up a lot of my stuff in Premiere if I'm doing a video podcast. Just send it over here to Mix and then send that right back. Again, there's Avid. Let's take a look at this question here. How about bringing remote guests into your podcast? Are StreamYard or Zoom the only choices, or are things like WebRTC and SRT calls a better, worse choice now easy enough for the average user? Okay, so let me just explain some of the terms here. WebRTC is basically if you are using the internet and a web browser to send video from one place to another, that's using WebRTC. It's low latency, high quality, it's good compression. SRT is basically a streaming protocol that has gained a lot of popularity. It's basically replacing RTMP, if that's something you know about. So are StreamYard or Zoom the only choice, or are things like WebRTC better choice? One of the biggest things with podcasts is people on the other end aren't always techie people. So it's really, really, really easy to just send them a StreamYard or a Zoom link. There are WebRTC things that make it nice. It's, I like things like Zencastr, where it's just basically one click, connect the microphone, connect the camera, you're done. And that's really important because when people are nervous to be on a podcast, excited to be on a podcast, the last thing they need to think about is I need to find like an SRT URL that I need to put in, things like that. But yes, ultimately SRT is going to be a stronger connection. But really the best thing you could do for remote guests is use something like Zencastr, where it does that local record. Distribution. Water break. All right. Lots of places you could distribute your podcast. Where should you do it? The one I'm going to tell you not to use is SoundCloud. A guy who used to run podcasting at Apple, he used to say, friends don't let friends host on SoundCloud. They get you in because it's free. It's not great. They basically, they're not great at analytics. They also, they do, looking for my words here. They will basically restream your thing and it will count as one play in your regular analytics. Don't use SoundCloud. Another very popular one nowadays is Anchor by Spotify. It's a really good functional software. It also has great production tools. The one caveat is it's owned by Spotify. Who knows if they ever make it exclusive to Spotify for things you do there. At the same time, they might say, we're going to help promote people who use Anchor and put their stuff on Spotify. But right now, it is open to everyone, and you don't need to only distribute your thing on Spotify. I'm just weary of one company owning things. And there's plenty of other sites that will let you distribute your podcast. Basically, podcasting right now, with limited exceptions, works through RSS, really simple syndication. This is technology from the early 90s, late 80s. Not much has changed there, which causes some issues, but we can talk about those later, or we can't, depending on timing. So basically, I like using Libsyn, Podbean, Spreaker. These are all similar services. You upload your file to them. You can use something called dynamic ad insertion, which actually lets you put in ads using time code rather than burning them into the podcast files. This is relatively new. It's only about 2 or so years old, but this is the thing that's basically going to turn podcasting into YouTube, because you can now have an ad marketplace. You can, say, hey, only serve my ad to people under 30 in New York. So that's a big deal in the podcasting world. Yeah, so that's a distribution. The other thing, a lot of people are using things like Patreon and Discord. These are services, well, Patreon in particular, you can have people, for $5, you can give them an RSS feed. And for $10, you can give them video of your podcast. It's a way to make extra money. And that's a pretty popular way to do that. And with Discord, it's a place where you can do, live chat, live chat conversation. People are using that as kind of a paid tier for their podcasting. Won't I recommend iTunes? Here's why I will not recommend iTunes. iTunes does not exist anymore. It is Apple Music, and Apple has paid me thousands and thousands of dollars to say that. No, iTunes itself, you can use to listen to podcasts or Apple Podcasts. It is not a broadcasting platform. You cannot use Apple to distribute your podcast. You do need to ultimately upload it to, or let Apple know that you have a podcast there. And I'll explain it now. Thank you, Wanda. You were going to make me talk about a thing. Basically, with all these podcasts, you get your RSS feed, and then you just need to submit it everywhere. Submit it to Apple, submit it to Google, submit it to Spotify, submit it to Pandora, all these people that do the broadcasts. There are some tools that'll just do it all for you. But ultimately, each of these places, they need a submission. And then every time you post a new podcast, they will automatically know that you have a new podcast and will distribute it. Thank you, Wanda. Now, a big question is, should I join a network? And this is for on the distribution side. Let's say that you have a podcast that has an audience. It's starting to, have the potential to make money. Maybe you don't want to stay independent. So let's talk about the benefits and negatives of being at a podcast network. Benefits, you can often get production support. They can often just do the edit for you, or they might have studios, or they could help with sound stuff. Advertising support. Companies like Midroll, which is now with SiriusXM, they have lots of advertisers and salespeople, and you just become another podcast in that bucket. And now with that dynamic ad insertion, a lot of times they're saying, I don't care who this podcast goes to, I just need 1 million listens. You're just a part of that pool of 1 million listens, and you get your percentage of that money. Hosting support. Podcast hosting can be expensive, especially as your podcast gets popular. Excuse me. These plans are cheap, $5-10 a month when you're only doing few dozen, few hundred, few thousand plays. But you can get into the tens of thousands of dollars on this if your podcast is really popular. Promotional support, they can help promote if they have an advertising budget, or, you can say, hey, let's do a podcast swap. We're going to do a fee drop of your podcast and someone else's podcast so their audience learns about you. Or you can just do commercials for each other. Teamwork. And just generally less work. You'd have extra people helping you out. Negatives, it can cost you money. Sometimes you need to pay to use a network. You may need to give up a percentage or all of the ownership of your podcast, which a lot of people don't want. You want to own your podcast generally. They might want your intellectual property. Try not to give that away. You also have the potential to become a small fish in a big pond. If you're a 10,000 listener podcast where there's also million listener podcasts, guess which one they're going to pay more attention to. So those are the pros and cons of a network. In the chat, Mia asks, do I use Vimeo? Vimeo is great. I use it particularly with Patreon. They are one of the best whitelisting services where you can basically hide, videos behind a domain, for example, patreon.com or your own website or on a WordPress site. They also just have a good player. You can do like email, you can get emails. So like you can require an email to go onto Vimeo, and then that's their key to watch. So I do like Vimeo very much. And that is the end of my planned presentation. I am open to questions now. We've got about 10 or so minutes left, or we'll awkwardly end early, but I don't want to do that. Eric and Steve, they've been working on this for like 9 hours today. I want to keep until the very, very end. So happy to answer any questions about podcasting, or about not podcasting. Over here to talk about podcasting. I know I answered a bunch over the course of this. And if anyone, like anonymous attendee, has more questions, you're more than welcome to ask. Normally I could like see a bunch of people's faces and I could like awkwardly call you out about questions and stuff, but now I'm just kind of talking to myself here.
But you're doing a great job of it.
Thank you, Eric.
That's the thing. Yes, if you have any more, I saw another question pop into the Q&A.
Yeah, what's my best guess for the earlier audio problem with the rig? Honestly, these things have a 9-volt battery in them. And if I were to guess, it's at the end of its lifespan. So I'm going to say maybe that's the end of my thing. Future of podcasting. Good question, Damon. Future of podcasting is huge. The biggest thing is most people don't know about podcasts right now. They're popular, they're in the news. You hear about Rogan, you hear about this and that. You hear about these big acquisitions. The future is huge. The amount of money being spent on these acquisitions, on new advertising technologies and platforms. I mean, this thing is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be bigger than video, but this thing is going to explode. It's already exploding. There is just so much potential. And again, that dynamic ad insertion is going to be huge. And again, what that does is it means that smaller podcasters can make smaller amounts of money. That means something to them. Might not mean something to, Conan O'Brien, but it means something to, Joe 10,000 podcaster on a niche topic. And, with niche topics, if I love Diet Coke and I do a niche podcast on Diet Coke's a great sponsor. They might not be for some, probably not the best example, but you can get kind of really niche ads like that. So the future of podcasting is huge. I think it's going to also involve a lot more video because why not just have another audience available? I think that's what it's going to be. Do I recommend uploading to YouTube? Yes. Best search discovery platform out there. You can't beat YouTube for that. Do I recommend a budget to start and make a great profit? You don't need a budget to start. Your phone is enough to start with. Ideally, spend a little bit of money on a microphone at the very least. Maybe get into Creative Cloud for Audition, but you really don't need to spend a lot of money to do this. I actually, at the scale of some of the podcasts that I've done, thank you for stopping my sharing. Now you get to see my face pig, which is questionably useful. I have actually sent like that $70 USB microphone to people and just given it to them as a gift for a podcast of a big enough size when I worked on Star Talk. To get that audio quality, I mean, $70 is a drop in the bucket in a podcast that's making a lot more money than that. Or you could have them send it back. So I almost consider microphones nowadays I don't want to say disposable because I like trees and the environment and whatnot. But, useful to have people with a good microphone. Let's see. VR podcast. I have no idea what that means, but thank you, Damon.
Virtual reality podcasts?
Sure, VR. I mean, I'm sure there's people during Streaming Media East Connect that said other things about VR. I'm on team augmented reality. I'm not sure if VR is going to take off in a way. I mean, okay, great. You're going to look at people's faces. Cool. I mean, sure, if people like that, go for it. I am personally not taking part in VR podcasts at the moment. Let's see.
I really want to endorse the question, what's the difference between a podcast and a vlog?
What's the difference between vlogs and a podcast? A vlog, I mean, ultimately, each of these are just content that have a different way that you're talking. A vlog is typically direct to video camera. It's, people walking around, whatever. The bottom line is it has video. Sure, you could call a podcast an audio blog if you want to. It just depends on the kind of content, the way you're doing it. I mean, these things have a lot in common. Actually, a lot of YouTubers now, they made a much bigger switch to podcasting than they did to TV. They just seem to work better that way. So similar kinds of talent. Content is ultimately king. They have just a better transition to the audio medium than the TV medium.
And vlogs typically are not using RSS for distribution, right?
Vlogs typically do not know. Those are typically on YouTube, one of those platforms. Let's see. Percentage of podcasts consumed on smartphones versus other devices. Mostly smartphones. I don't have my old Star Talk data anymore, but this is people commuting, people on the go. What you're getting a lot more now is actually smart home devices. Google Homes, Alexas. That is a growing and again, one of the big areas where I think you're going to see growth, because people are cooking dinner, they want to listen on their high quality, already their Alexa. So I think that's going to be a huge place for growth over the coming year or so. I've done that one. Let's see here. Do I have a podcast? Nope. Thank you. Which mic? I don't remember what that was about, so I will say this mic. Off topic about the SM57. Why does it need another preamp to bring the level like the Cloud? So does it need 2 preamps? I don't completely know the details behind that, so I will not answer it. All right. Last chance for questions. Or silence. Silence works too. Okay. Here we go. A couple more questions. All right. Analytics. Good question, Anonymous. Anonymous attendee, you are asking all the great questions and things that I arguably should have put in the presentation in the first place. What about podcast consumption stats, streaming versus downloading? Spotify changed the game with streaming. They have a lot more people streaming than downloading. The bottom line is it doesn't really matter. It's interesting maybe to see how people are listening for random reasons, but you just care that they're listening to the podcasts. But actually, let's talk a little more about analytics. What you really want is qualitative analytics. Unfortunately, this is on a platform by platform basis. RSS does not give you the ability to do qualitative analytics. It tells you how many people downloaded, some very other basic information. That's it. This is one of the big issues with podcasting. Spotify, Apple, Google, they will give you things like minute by minute when people are listening, tuning away. So I use that on Star Talk to actually, on Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast. We redid the intro to the show. We saw people were tuning out because our intro was too long. We saw that music going to breaks was a detriment to people listening to the ads. So you can use that kind of information to actually improve your podcast or see if a segment is working good. And this is no different than what you would do in live streaming or TV, but it's in the podcast world. Mia, the brand of mic, this is a Shure SM50. Actually, I lied. I've been lying all along. This is Shure SM48. It is the cheaper younger brother of the SM58. And maybe one of the things about it that didn't work is that it was cheaper. Let's see, what really budget microphones would I recommend who really need inexpensive teachers and stuff? Under 30. So actually, this is a $40 microphone. This is a pretty solid microphone, the 48. The blue snowball, I think it's called, is about $30. So that's pretty good too. When you get the microphones under $30, you're really dealing with crapola. So yeah, don't do that. An adapter, I mean, these are like $30 for the. You're gonna need to probably spend at least $50 to have a solid low-level microphone system. Mia, answer live. Thank you. Thank you, Mia. Let's see, is there anything else here? I think this will probably be the last question here. How do you sign up for an RSS feed? So this is more on the consumer end, which is why I didn't cover it. But basically, most consumers don't know about RSS because they just see it pop up in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. RSS is really just a behind the scenes thing. That said, you can type a physical, you could literally take that URL and most of these software say add RSS feed, and then you can add it in there. So I hope I answered all of your questions. Thank you all. I have no idea if you've been liking or enjoying this because I have just been staring at my own face, who has been enjoying this.
Well, I tell you, almost everybody stuck around. So that's a good sign, right?
Are we talking like, are these people like at hospitals and they can't change the channel, or are they like actively choosing to be here?
They are actively choosing to be here. So
fascinating.
Yes, you covered a tremendous amount. Someone asked earlier, are you willing to share your slide deck? Is that something that we could?
Yeah, I'll share the slide deck. There's nothing proprietary, or I mean, it's just a bunch of stuff, but I am happy to share that. Also happy to answer any questions over on Twitter at Ben Makes TV. I actually do so not a podcast, but I should say a big thing in the audio space now is live audio broadcasting through things like Clubhouse, Twitter, Facebook's building their own. I've actually been one of the beta testers for the Twitter space, so I've been using that for months. That is another huge, whole other conversation, but I do Twitter spaces there a bunch. So if any of you want to hear me on one of those, I will be doing one with a bunch of really cool science people next Wednesday, the 26th at 8 p.m. Nothing about podcasting or any or technology at all, but that's a whole brand new space that's just starting to explode.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ben. Steve just put your Twitter handle in the chat. That's how people can stalk you and chase you down and ask you more questions and find out when you're doing Twitter spaces.
Wonderful.
This has been terrific. That wraps up day 4 of Streaming Media East Connect. And once again, I'd like to thank Signient for helping make all this possible. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern.
When the director calls action.
And action.
When the game is on.
Pick it up, it's good.
Or it's time to save the universe again. Media Shuttle is there. Trusted by more than 25,000 media companies, Media Shuttle delivers, making it easy and secure to send any size file anywhere fast. The journey begins with Media Shuttle portals, customized and branded for any project and designed to be so easy, your end users will love it. All while giving operations teams complete control through a simple yet powerful admin interface. Add users, set permissions, customize file delivery specs, and report on all activity. Blast off with proprietary acceleration technology. Media Shuttle moves your content anywhere in the internet-connected world at hyper speeds. Along the way, your files are protected. Our commitment to enterprise-grade security has made Media Shuttle a preferred tool with Hollywood studios, major sports leagues, broadcasters, and more. With Media Shuttle, your files are never handed over to Signient. File movement is orchestrated between the end user's workstation and your storage, whether on-prem or in the cloud. Your IT team simply provisions your storage, connecting it to the Media Shuttle cloud service, and Signient handles the rest. Get started on your Media Shuttle journey today, a journey without limits.